I think the record high is the top, because I can't see the colors coming through. And the very bottom squiggle is the record low.
Oh,
And then the third one from the bottom is their high temperatures for that season. And the second one from the bottom is their low temperatures for the season. So the two center lines are the ones you really kind of need to watch. And then the very top and bottom lines are their extremes, high and lows. If I'll find the, I think I'll find the article because I can't see the colors.
they aren't showing up very good. So
Yeah.
I guess what I want to say from this is temperature wise, although in January, we may not have the same temperatures as Randy Oliver. It looks to me like what he's really talking about are the temperatures of the products and that you could go by that. But so much easier and clearer to understand would be to look at the Honeybee Health Coalition publication. I think it's just straightforward, clear, makes good sense. And so I would go by that. So right now, here we are after the 1st of November, he's saying it's a time when they would use oxalic. It's the time when we use oxalic. We do a cleanup with oxalic acid here in this month or in the first part of December. Really get a great knockdown. Almost all the brood is out of the hive when oxalic works the very best. And you can really clean up those mites. The only time we need to do mite treatments in the spring is when we have like new colonies. But not a new colony I've made, but if I get like bees from a package bees or something else, or we collect a swarm. What'd you say? I'm sorry.
A swarm catch?
Yeah, a swarm catch, something like that. So I'm going to stop sharing this now. And we are back to whatever. So I don't know if that, Dan, if that answers your question. Boy, if you want to, like reading that will make you think, go read Randy Oliver's stuff. He's always doing something interesting. So our next question is from, or our first question is from Rich. And Rich says, when I treated the bees for mites, the iron burned some bees. Any suggestions on how to keep this from happening again? I don't do this, so I'm going to need Cheryl or Robert or somebody who does this sublimation to speak up and tell us what's going on.
Go, Robert. Slatted rack helps.
Cheryl, both and I, we both use slatted racks. And that's another piece that gives extra airspace on the bottom board between the bottom of the bottom super or bottom brood box and the entrance. I like it because there's more air this time of year for it to dissipate the vapors on. And so, it doesn't really burn. I don't get much, the bees aren't really clustered down there this time of year. So I don't end up with dead bees.
I have a few every once in a while that decide to attack the wand. It might get in the reservoir, but not very often.
Yeah, well, I know on nukes, I don't have slatted racks on my nukes, and it has a better chance of coming in contact with propolis or beeswax that's on the lower frames. And sometimes if there's a big cluster of bees and they're down there, but I find that if I stick it in cool and let it warm up, the bees really stay out of it or they get away from it.
Okie dokie. Well, you didn't set your hive on fire, so that's the good news, Rich. A few bees, not a big deal. The hive is a big deal.
Set your timer on your phone and make sure it goes off.
Oh, good plan.
It has happened.
Good plan. So our next question is from Ed, and Ed says, I have 2 medium supers in which I harvested from my hives in the fall of 2019. I was not able to extract them immediately, so they sat for some time. When I finally did get around to attempting to attempt extracting them, I got the smell of alcohol, even though they were 100% capped. I assume they fermented, so I isolated them. They have sat never being extracted. I have a couple of sequential questions. First, should I extract and discard both the drawn comb and the honey and clean the frames? Let's just go with that one first. What do we think?
Yes. Well, no. Try
Is
to
the-
extract it. I think if it's set this long, it's probably crystallized. And the crystallization may have been what helped it to get to that point where it fermented. Because even though it's capped, if it separates and the yeast are in there and you have the portion that solidifies, which turns into the crystals, and you have the portion that's liquid, the liquid has a higher moisture content. And so that would allow the fermentation. And that's, you know, the honey's ruined. I would extract it just to try to clean it up, get the liquid off of it. You can put them on a couple hives. It would have been easier to do last month, but maybe this week they might clean some of those crystals out and toss them out. They won't use them. They'll try to get rid of them. That's what I would end up doing. So you can try to extract and then salvage those combs for next year if the bees have a chance to clean them up.
So the other option was extract and discard the honey, which is what you're basically saying that they should do. At some point, give the drawn comb back to the bees to clean up. You think, so are you saying, Robert, set it out and actually let them rob it out?
Oh, no. So what I would say is put it back on a strong colony. It may be too late this time of year. Never put your combs out to let the bees clean up. That, number one, creates robbing. It teaches the bees to rob and creates a mess. It'll destroy your comb somewhat. It's not a good cleanup, but it may be too late for this year. It's nice enough this week, but if you don't get it done this week, you're probably not going to get it done until next year.
So do you feel like any of this comb is salvageable?
I think the comb is salvageable. There's nothing wrong with the comb, but it's the product that's in the comb is the problem.
But if you put that back on a strong hive, they will clean it out. They won't eat it, but they will clean it out in some way and then make it so that that is a usable comb.
Yeah. And the hives may not be strong enough to really do a good job right now, knowing where the population is. They're in decline until next year. So.
Yeah, that's a possibility. So he also suggests don't extract, and this is an option, just cut out the comb and throw away everything except the frames. And that's a possibility to do as well. You can put go ahead.
I'm sorry, it is salvageable. It's just not going to be easy.
Yes, yeah. Put unextracted combs back in the hive, allow the bees to use the honey over winter. I don't think they will use that honey at all.
I don't think so either.
And then he says, throw everything away and start over. So that's harsh. That's harsh. We don't have to do that, but you will, what you can salvage will probably be pretty minimal. The last one was throw away everything and find a new hobby. Once a beekeeper, always a beekeeper. I'm sorry, you're stuck with this. That's the way it is. So I think
learn from the opportunity.
I think we've all learned more lessons than we'd like to count from the opportunity. We've had little things, little learning moments that we've had in our beekeeping careers that are always kind of like not as much fun as we'd like them to be, but I hope that helps and answers some questions. So our next one comes from Jay, and Jay asks, when making syrup, either 2-to-1 or 1-to-1, does the mixture need to come to a near boil, or does it matter? Does sugar change in property when dissolved closer to boil than if it is just dissolved? Who's made some syrup lately? Mr. Musburger, have you made syrup lately?
No, I have not fed my bees this fall yet.
Well, you've been sick. You're all better now. You'll get them fed.
I, you know, I get my water hot. I try not to get it boiling, just because it dissolves the sugar completely. I don't have the granules in there. So, I think when it changes, the way I understand it, is when you make fondant, you get it so hot that it changes from, somebody can correct me, from sucrose to more fructose. Is that true? That's what I understood was, because I think when you make fondant, it's 234 degrees. So,
It does change it. And I think that getting it all dissolved is important. A lot of people have talked about having crystallized syrup. And if you don't get all those sugar crystals dissolved, you're kind of giving them a head start on starting to crystallize. So
Yep.
that would be why. But whether you just have to have hot water and you want it dissolved. So
Now, so I always boil my water
Mhm.
and then pour it onto the crystals to get it to, if I'm doing 2-to-1 especially, I always boil my water and then pour them in the jar and then I stir. And it takes about 10 to 15 minutes, but you have to be there to, stir it. But that's what I do. I don't boil the mixture. I only put extremely hot water onto the sugar crystal.
Very good. Very good. Okie dokie. If anybody's looking at the chat room, I'm not looking at that. See if we have any questions come up. Don't hesitate. Or if you want to just unmute yourself and ask a question, that's fine too. So this is from Molly. I'm thinking of ordering bees for a second hive, but my current hive, which was a package in April, seems very strong. At least now they do. Should I order a package for April for my second hive, or a nuke for May, or can I do a split? Or do I have to wait and make that decision based upon how we get through the winter? Molly, your crystal ball will be your friend here, and you have to. Jolie, you and Cecil, every year, this is it. What do you do? What do you tell people?
Yeah, I mean, right now, like you say, you just kind of bet on that being, if it's a good strong hive now, you just kind of assume maybe it'll be a strong hive, but there's no guarantee of anything making it through the year. So, I mean, maybe she could order a package and be ready to have 2 hives to start if her other one's strong enough. That would be the guarantee.
Have your equipment ready. Prepare for a second. If you don't order a package, if you think that you might want one and you get up to package time and you haven't ordered one, there won't be one available for you. Packages frequently sell out in our area. So that piece of it, have to decide ahead of time. But there are quite a few more people now doing nucleus colonies. And so if that's something that you might think of, and of course, no matter what, if you decide to split your own, and that's a possibility as well, most of us recommend considering a queen, buy a queen. And so the difference between what a nuke costs and a queen costs, that's kind of significant. So
Well, I just want to say,
probably wait until at least February or the beginning of March and still be able to order a package.
swarm
Good
season
advice.
starts in 6 months and 2 weeks.
Evil.
The same thing with this question is have you ever made a split? Have you ever done a nuke? Have you ever tried something new? Is what I've always done. Is I want to do something new every year, something that I haven't done. And if your hive comes out of the winter strong, good idea is to make a split. Maybe you can keep them from swarming. So you know, those are always fun things to do. Walk away splits sometimes, you know, or buy a queen and make a split. So those are just, I just like people to try something new every year so that they may failure or success doesn't matter. It's just you tried something new and you learned something.
Learn something new. We have a couple of things related to syrup in the chat box I just clicked on and saw. And Steve, you might speak to this one as well. Is it common for 2-to-1 syrup to crystallize in a feeder after a day or two? We are getting crystals in the bottom and around the edges. Yes,
All good.
it is common, but you told us just a few days ago, what do you do that you think helps
One-
that?
Well, we just talked, one thing is make sure that you dissolve your sugar really well. Hot water, the hotter water, I get mine. Sometimes when I walk away, it's boiling when I put the sugar in. So it's hot enough to dissolve it pretty quick. And you know, when you look at your syrup and you put that in and you're mixing it, it clears. You'll see it won't be cloudy. It'll clear up. You should be able to see the bottom of the pan when you do that. What I also do is I use vinegar. I put in a tablespoon or some, like the cap of the vinegar bottle. I put one of those per gallon in. I think it's a teaspoon or tablespoon. It's not going to hurt that much. One, it keeps it from turning. I've had it where it gets kind of moldy, and it also will keep it from crystallizing like that. So, and all the stuff I've read, vinegar doesn't hurt. I like to use the organic apple cider vinegar, but you can use the white vinegar too. Try that and see how that works.
Wasn't it a teaspoon, Steve?
Huh?
Wasn't it a teaspoon per gallon?
Yeah, I think it is a teaspoon. When I start doing quantities of it, I don't get really exact. Oh yeah, that looks pretty good. And I haven't seen any effects on my bees. And I've read this in 2 or 3 different articles. So it works for me, especially those top feeders. Those top feeders have a tendency for whatever reason to crystallize faster than a jar. But I also heard, didn't we talk to somebody last year? They were putting it in jars and it crystallized in the lid and they couldn't get it through the holes and their bees starved to death. So if you're using jar feeders, you want to keep an eye on that. Make sure those holes don't crystallize.
Yeah. You have to make sure it's totally liquid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Going on with the feed again, a couple more things. Brenda has said, so if my syrup was crunchy and thick in places, then it got too hot. You may have made candy, I think, from that. And of course, maybe it is what we just said. It didn't get dissolved, it's crystallizing. But if you overcook it, you can also get that, you just want to dissolve the sugar when you're making syrup. If you're making candy boards, then you're cooking it. But if you do something in between, you kind of have a mess.
And don't get frustrated if you're making candy boards. Man, you just got to learn when you're making it what it looks like, what it does. I mean, you just got to keep trying and you'll get it. You don't want any of that to be any kind of liquid, because when you put that in there, it runs down on your bees. So it's just, there's Steve Tipton and I have talked several times. There's an art to making it. It's not something that you just do it and it makes it. It's you just got to learn the consistencies and the looks of it.
So this question is from Brenda that she sent to me, and she says, now that we have some nice warm weather for a week or so, if I lift the hives and they are not heavy, do I start the jars feeding for just this next week? At what continuing temps do I put on the food patties? And then she wants to ask a question about ventilations. She says, so she saw somebody drilled a hole in the top box for winter ventilation, and is that a good idea? So a lot to unpack there. What So starting this week, they definitely would take syrup. So you could feed them liquid feed this week. Anybody have a temperature for food patties that they'd like to put out there?
I don't use food patties at all.
You talking pollen patties or are you talking?
No, I think she's meaning like candy, solid candy.
Oh, I haven't made any yet, but I only use those when it's cold out and the bees have come to the top, and then I
Yeah.
put them on there. Other than that, if they're down there in the bottom box, I don't worry about them. They've got plenty of stores above them.
If you were to put them
Emergency
on,
stuff.
I don't think it's going to do any harm to your bees. You're not going to, it's not a detrimental thing, but it really is an emergency feed. So it's kind of at that. So
The other thing,
Let's-
if she's using jar feeders, if she's putting them on top of the frames, the jars, I don't think temperature is going to make a big difference anyway. If they're coming up there and they're balled up there, they're going to get it. So, but I mean, if you're using the jar feeder in the front, the Boardman feeders, they're not going to go down there and get it when it's cold out. So
she says I think she says she's using a trough feeder, or maybe she means a division board feeder or something. I'm not sure, but I think that's it. So this week, feed them some syrup, get them to take it if they will. And yeah, they, like Robert put into the chat, if they don't need feed, they won't take it. See what they've got. As far as ventilation, she said she saw people drilling a hole in the top box for winter ventilation. Is this a good idea? I believe I've heard Jolie and Cecil say a number of times that their equipment is old enough that it is already pre-ventilated. And that's the condition ours is. It is pre-ventilated. So I'm not drilling any holes in anything, but anybody else? Cheryl, you have nice new equipment. Do you have any, are you drilling ventilation holes?
Sometimes I drill more holes in my winter inner covers. I use those man-leg winter inner covers that have a deep and a shallow side that you could put a candy board in if you wanted to. And sometimes I'll drill an extra couple holes so I can put more jars on than just the one center one. But I don't think you can have too much ventilation ever. So, I mean, it's not going to hurt anything. If they don't like it, they'll plug them up.
Exactly. You'll come out in the spring and they'll be propylized over.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So I didn't have any more questions that anybody sent me, and that was kind of short. So I went to Clarence, and I don't know if you guys know Clarence Collison. Clarence Collison wrote this great book, and it's called What Do You Know? Clarence was at the University of Mississippi for years, head of entomology, just such a good teacher. Very calm, very methodical in how he teaches. I really enjoyed learning from him. So, but this whole book is like questions and answers about bees. So get yourself a little piece of paper and a pencil. I have 10 winter questions for you, and see kind of a little self quiz about wintering your bees. And you can talk amongst yourself if you want, as long as you're muted, and you can, have it be kind of a group thing, or you can compete against each other. We told Clarence that his book had encouraged lively discussions at our house at different times, that there were times when Steve and I would kind of go, I don't agree with that. And I'd say, well, I think he's right because, and so that was lots of fun. All right. Ready or not? He starts off with, as you prepare your colonies for winter, what action would you recommend upon finding the following situations? So each one of these going into winter, what would you do? Number one, a moderately strong colony with a large population of drones. What little action would you take? And these are mostly just like a word or two. You know, they don't take much to do. Okay. Number 2. A colony with most of the bees and brood in the uppermost hive body and the bottom hive body is filled with honey. What would you do? Okie dokie. Number 3. A weak colony with a few wax moth larvae tunneling in the outside combs of the brood chamber. What would you do?
I would call them gone.
That's a hint.
Oh, sorry.
I'd stab them with my hive tool.
That's set them on fire or something. I don't know. That's okay. Number 4, a colony with 2 full depth hive bodies containing brood and honey and pollen and an empty medium deep honey super on top. What should you do? 2 full deep hive bodies containing brood, honey, and pollen, and an empty medium deep honey super on top. Number 5, a strong colony with approximately 20 pounds of honey reserves. Number 6, a colony will starve in midwinter even though there is plenty of honey in the lower brood food chambers. Explain why a colony will starve if there is little honey in the upper brood food chamber and may also starve if the upper brood food chamber is honey bound. This one is a tricky one. A colony will starve in midwinter even though there is plenty of honey in the lower brood food chambers. Explain why a colony will starve if there is little honey in the upper brood food chamber and may also starve if the upper brood food chamber is honey bound. Number 7, why do more colonies die in late winter, early spring than during the coldest part of winter? 8, why can an upper entrance be desirable in wintering colonies? He gave 2 reasons, at least 2. 9, in midwinter, explain why feeding sugar candy is preferred over feeding sugar syrup when a colony is found short of food stores. And number 10, what are 2 disadvantages of using communal or open outdoor feeding? Okay, everybody got your answers?
That's a heck of a lot of questions.
It was 10. It's 10 questions.
Yeah.
We can do this. I'm going to start with Christy Sanderson. It's good to see you, Christy Sanderson. Question
Hello,
number
Mrs.
1.
Dixon.
Where is that? I lost my page. Question number
Grand
1 was
Poobah.
a moderately strong, let's see. You find a moderately strong colony with a large population of drones. What are you going to do?
I'm gonna see if it's queen right or not.
She gets
And
all the points. She's got it. Check to see if it's queen right. In fact, what if you get in your hive right now and there are no drones?
that's a good thing. That means they've kicked them all out. I don't want to see drones this time of year.
I never
Poor boys.
got drones.
Poor
And
boys.
don't
Poor-
stand a chance.
Yeah.
That's right. Get out.
They had to go away. It's too bad. Sorry, guys. It's the way it
You're
is.
using too many
That's a normal
resources.
thing. And yet I do see drones occasionally, but not often. All right. All right, thank you. Number one, and this is self-checking, so you're on the honor system here for your checking your answers to. Number two, Steve Messberger, tell us, a colony with most of the bees and brood in the uppermost hive body and the bottom hive body is filled with honey. What are you going to do?
I'm gonna reverse the boxes.
You get all the points for that. That is exactly it. You want that honey on top. You got it. Easy answer.
I'm gonna get somebody to help me lift that bottom box because they're heavy.
You need your son. You get your kid over there to
I'm
have
gonna
him do
call
that.
Robert, tell him to come out and help me.
Oh,
It won't be me.
I understand why people do mediums. Those are so heavy. All right. Number three. I don't even know who else I have on here that would. There is Mr. Campbell. Mr. Campbell, would you like to answer this next question, number three? A weak colony with a few wax moth larvae tunneling at the outside of your combs of the brood chamber. What are you going to do if you find some wax moths?
I guess give up the hive.
That would be, Robert gave you a really good hint on that one. You know, Clarence said in his that you could, depending upon how much, and this is all depending, you could clean some of those out, you could remove some frames, and you could kill the queen, combine it with a stronger colony. But honestly, the bees do such a terrible job of cleaning up wax moths. It's a real hard thing for them to do. So I'm not sure
Yep.
that scrapping the whole mess this time of year isn't prudent. So
Freeze it all and clean it up.
yeah, it's
And
and if
that
there's
to
that,
the hive with few bees and with a lot of bees and little honey.
there you go. And that would depend upon how much food was in that hive. If that hive had a lot of food but not many bees, then that would certainly make it worth something worth keeping. Okie dokie. Miss Cheryl, a colony with 2 full deep hive bodies containing brood, honey, pollen, and an empty medium depth honey super on top. What you going to do?
Remove the super.
You're going to do what? I'm sorry.
Remove the super.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering why that super's on there. It's like, just, okay, well, hanging out, there it is. And you don't just store that away for the rest of the year. All
I think he
righty.
made that question up.
I did make that question up. Clarence did these.
Yeah.
Okay. A strong colony with approximately 20 pounds of honey reserves. What do we have? What do you think, Robert? What are you going to do?
Oh, that's a good one. A candidate for feeding.
You know, if it's a strong colony, they're going to go through a lot. I agree. We got that. And you agree with Clarence. All good. Number 6, a colony will starve in midwinter, even though there is plenty of honey in the lower brood food chambers. Explain why a colony will starve if there is little honey in the upper brood food chamber, and may also starve if the upper brood food chamber is honey bound. Jolie, have you ever heard of that? The second part, not that I know what answer that you can answer the first part, but the second part is the part that I kind of went, I don't know.
Look,
They can-
Cecil's trying to get me to read his answer. So why don't we
Cecil,
just-
what?
Can't hear you.
The second part is if that upper chamber is honey bound,
Yes.
the cluster has nowhere. The cluster needs some room for bees to actually stick their heads in those cells and keep the cluster warm. If they're just between those frames and cannot get in empty cells, then they can't maintain that cluster. So they
You
have,
and Clarence agree. You get gold stars. That's exactly what Clarence said.
So
And
like the heat,
the first answer, the first part of the question is, if it's too cold,
Nobody can hear you.
Try
if
again.
it's too cold, the bees can't move over to, they can't always move to get honey to replenish the area where they're living. If it's off to the side, or in the other box. And so, so sometimes a hive can be full of honey and it's too cold for them to move around to get to it.
So what do you do?
Usually it's at a time when you're in your house with the fireplace and they're out there in the cold. So
Freezing to death. Yeah.
you order a nuke.
Bruce had that happen, Becky.
Hive inspection and see that.
What did
Well,
Cecil
and
say?
usually it's after they've started raising brood when they have to go get food and bring it back to the brood nest.
That can certainly be the case. I know when we've had a break in the weather, if it looks like I have only frames that are on the very outside of my boxes, we'll move them on a nice day. But if it is, it can happen. They can starve with food in the hive.
So I think this has been a very interesting question, and Cecil's answer to that sounds like they need some empty cells for those heat generators to go into, and if they've got too much food, they don't have that space, they can't do that because that's how they generate heat.
It is interesting. I mean, and
Bruce had that happen to him on a post.
That makes me wonder, how would you ever know?
when they die and you clean them out next spring.
Oh. Yeah, that's my question is, how are you actually going to be out there in January figuring that out?
Yeah, that's kind of it.
It's
Generally, you see that.
and I wonder how often that really happens. I don't know.
I don't know. What did Cecil add, Jolie?
He was mumbling that like now if you're moving your frame, you say it.
Like
Well,
this time
louder.
of year or a little later, as you do your hive inspection, you see that there is some empty space, in those center frames in your upper box. You see that there's still a little empty space in there. If the rest of the hive is pretty heavy with honey, you don't want to keep feeding them sugar water to the point to where they fill all of those cells up. I mean, you can actually, I've heard people say, can you overfeed? And in that situation, you can overfeed if they fill all of those empty center space in your.
We have a tendency to have some pretty nice weather off and on. So I think I really don't want to scare new beekeepers into running out in their hives and say, oh my God, I don't think they're going to do it. So I think it's a rare deal actually, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Do you think it's a rare, Cecil, do you think that's kind of a rarity maybe?
Yeah, generally, if that happened, it was probably a beekeeper's fault because the bees tend to arrange their hive the way they want it better than actually we do.
Yeah. Don't everybody panic.
Good point. The bees know what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, we
All right.
confuse bees more than anything. So
That's probably the truth. So number 7, why do more colonies die during late winter, early spring than during the coldest part of the winter? Cheryl, you haven't answered anything in a while. Why does that happen?
Will they possibly starve out?
Possibly.
well,
Varroa?
Maybe. Honestly, he talked about that they run out of food.
They ran out of
I mean,
food.
they just ran out. And what are they doing then? They're growing babies.
Yeah,
So
they're going through a lot of food.
they're going through a lot of food.
yeah, I learned a hard lesson a few years back. I had a really strong hive in that particular time of year. I had fondant on, but the weather got really rainy and wet. I couldn't get out in the fields, and it was a horribly strong hive, and they just ate themselves out of food, and there's nothing out there at that time of year. They had some fondant. I had some fondant on them, but they'd ate all that, and I didn't get it. I was about 2 days late, and they starved to death. Really kind of made me sad because it was just the queen was just phenomenal. She just was crazy. She just did a great job. So that's probably the most important time. We've talked about that quite a bit in our meetings. That's when we starve our bees more than anything, about March.
I think Dr. Ellis told us that he called March the cruelest month because you think, okay, they made it. Look, there's 3 dandelions out there. They're going to be okay. And
Yeah,
no,
there's nothing out there, not enough out there to sustain a hive.
there's not
So
enough.
that's when you really want to be critical of your bees. So, yeah.
Really can be. All right, number 8. Why can an upper entrance be desirable in wintering a colony? And Clarence gives 2 reasons. Ed, you have been very, very quiet tonight. We kind of started without even saying hi. So do you feel like, do you have an answer for that one?
Well, I'm one that if you have an uninsulated hive, you need ventilation. If you have an insulated hive, you don't need ventilation. You look at bees in trees and they don't have ventilation. They close everything up. And so, yeah, if you have uninsulated hives, then you need to have some ventilation holes to get. And we have different beekeepers that have screen bottom boards and they just leave it open. And the bees will do a pretty good job of controlling the drafts and stuff through the hive. So if they've got the other stuff, that's not going to kill them.
Ventilation was one of Dr. Collison's primary reasons for an upper entrance. And I'm kind of surprised he named the other one, being from Mississippi. He said it had to do with snow. If you get a lot of snow, an upper entrance can be important. If you get that blocked off, you can get it.
I have to, when it snows, I have to go out and check because I have 3 hives that face south and I have one that faces west. And if we get snow, I have to go check to see that one of the hives hasn't snowed over, and I remove it and then we're okay.
Well, I run all notched inner covers, and that's their entrance. But what we talk about in the wintertime when it snows and you get a big pile of snow on your hive, and we all tilt our hives a little bit forward. Well, when that melts, it runs down on the front of the hive and freezes. It blocks that entrance. So it's always good to have that little opening that they can get in and out of. And I always shove my lids forward. And I forget who our guest speaker was, but he talked about, I think it was Randy Oliver, if you ventilate, you want your ventilation towards the front of the hive. You don't want a draft going through your hive. You just want a ventilation. So if you're running notched inner covers, put them towards the front.
Cool.
That's it.
Makes
That's my
sense.
piece.
Number 9, in midwinter, explain why feeding sugar candy is preferred over feeding sugar syrup when a colony is found short on food stores. Christy, I think I'm back to you.
Okay. I mean, we're feeding sugar candy when it's cold just because we're usually feeding it when the bees have run out of food, and they can handle that better than a liquid feed. It's right there on top of your top bars, and the bees, if they're out of food, are clustered right up there at the top of the.
I think proximity is a good portion of it, that's for sure. Clarence also mentioned the water factor, and that you don't necessarily want to be adding more moisture to that hive. And if you add a solid candy, you're not. So that's a good answer. Either one of those would work.
Because that's what they do in Mississippi. Is all I have to say.
Probably is what they do in Mississippi, but he knew about
They had
snow.
a winter in Mississippi.
If you didn't ever hear Clarence, we should have him as a guest again because he just such a great guy for
There you go.
funny.
How
All
about-
right.
How about the second year and beyond beekeeping?
About
Having, having,
have him be a speaker.
Yeah.
We could talk about that.
there we go.
Okay. What are two disadvantages of using communal or open outdoor feeding, which is one of Becky's pet peeves, but we don't. Cheryl knows like 10 because Becky's told her 10 things that this is not to do. Go, Cheryl. What is it?
Robbing
Yeah.
causes robbing amongst all your other hives and fighting.
Yeah.
And it spreads disease.
Yep. Both of those. One that I think is important is that if your hive needs fed and you're doing an open feeding, you don't have any idea which the hive that was hungry, if they got the food. And probably if they're a weak hive,
didn't get any.
didn't get as much as the others. Okay.
Make your bees mean too.
Yeah,
You know,
Yeah.
make some defense.
not a fan. So, as I said, these are from Clarence. What do you know? This was from the section on colony management. And so, if you scored 8 or better, count up, self-scoring, your bees will likely survive the winter. Give yourself a pat on the back. If you scored 4 or less, ask for a good bee book for Christmas and sign up for the beginning beekeeping classes and do it again. Yay, that's it. We're going to have those, and with those, there'll be stuff in this month's buzzer about beginning classes. If you've had bees for less than 5 years, we certainly have classes that I think that you would enjoy. We've got beginning class. Get a friend to come with you. Misery loves company. Bring somebody to the class. Make them be a beekeeper. And the year 2 and beyond class as well. If you scored all 10, you love your bees and your bees would love you back. And I'm just kidding because that's anthropomorphism and your bees don't love you at all. But that's another story.
I had one of my scholarship students go, we learned a tough lesson. We went out late at 6:30 in the evening to do a sugar test and the bees weren't very nice. I said, yeah, they don't like nighttime.
Okay, we have a couple more questions. It looks like Nick says, I have spacer rings on my hives. Should these stay on all winter? Nick, I don't think that's a problem. Is this like around the top of the hive? So
Treatment shim.
I think they're fine. That's where we put, when we're doing candy boards or candy cookies, we put them in a shim like that. And I don't think it gives them, I don't think that's
I run 3-inch spacers all winter long because if I have to put fondant on, I got plenty of room to feed my bees.
yeah.
No, that's it. Now, I don't know if he's talking about shims or spacer, enough spacer that you could feed fondant with. Steve Tipton and I both use those bowls. They're like Dixie chili bowls. And you got to have room to put them in there. So I don't know.
Need about an inch. Yeah.
I don't know which he's talking about.
Amber says, do you need to use an inner cover with the candy board, or is it okay just to have the candy board on top of the frames? No, you want the candy board on top of the frames, and then spacer, frame, candy board, spacer around it. We put an inner on top. We still use our inner cover. Do you use yours, Steve?
Yeah, I put my inner cover on. I just have that spacer inner cover in my top. My notched inner cover is down, and I put a piece of lattice, which is 1/4 inch on top of that, and I put my top on. And then I can go out there and, 0-degree weather and lift that up and slide a block in there and off I go.
Brenda's asking a question that probably does need a little clarification, and we're probably being confusing here. Most of us are talking about a solid, hard candy that we're putting into the hive.
Mhm.
Fondant is a term that's often used for the softer candy that's in a queen cage. And so we are not using a soft candy in the hive at this time of the year. It's a hard, in candy making terms, it's a glass. It's a very hard piece of candy, but yeah. So just clarifying that it is not a soft.
Terminology is, yeah, I don't make the soft stuff. I make the hard candy, I guess, if that's, and I'm probably wrong. Maybe I should start saying it as candy. I always tell people it's like grandma made hard candy for her. So
you can make a fondant that is soft. You can buy fondant. You can buy it in like 20-pound blocks, and it will actually cut, and you can slice it and put it for feed inside your hives if you are so inclined. But anyway, I've never used it. Have no idea whether they'd like it or not. I just saw that Mr. Kelly is with us tonight. Hello, Mr. Kelly. Have you ever used fondant?
No, actually, we don't use it out here in the Southwest. Our philosophy is you feed them enough to make it through winter before winter gets here. And generally, most of the time we can. We still start checking in February sometime though, because we will usually have a week or so out here where we'll be in the 60s or 70s. And if that's the case, we can usually put on about a gallon of syrup. They'll take it down within that same day. And it just generally lasts about 2 or 3 days, that 60-degree weather. So we've never, ever had the opportunity to use it at all.
I haven't used the fondant either, but of course people do when they're doing queens then, but all righty. Well, I don't have any more questions. Anybody else see something that I've missed? Oh, somebody asked about pollen patties. Because they aren't raising brood right now, it's my understanding that it's not healthy to feed them pollen at this time unless they were absolutely in a pollen dearth, that there was no pollen in your hive, and then you might consider a pollen supplement. Does anybody else have different information on pollen patties?
Becky, who was the guest speaker that said that they did a test on pollen patties and that they put a sheet or something out front of the hives and they put the pollen patties in? The bees ate the syrup and drug everything else out and threw it out of the hive. Is that
Randy Oliver?
Maybe it was. Well, Randy Oliver loves that stuff, but I don't think it was Randy that said that.
Who was it? Cheryl?
Hayes.
Oh, Jerry. You're right. It was Jerry Hayes.
Yeah, it was Jerry.
So many times
So,
they haul it out as trash.
Maybe we should look into that. I don't know.
My bees even haul candy out as trash.
Especially like granulated sugar.
Yeah. Well, even on my candy boards, they haul out.
Yeah, I've had them haul
No,
out.
and they do take some of that out, but I do know they eat.
Well, yeah, they eat some of it, but yeah, on nicer days they'll carry it out.
Yeah, I know. That was just my thought. I know somebody, and it was Jerry Hayes that did say it. Now that I remember, but so I don't know.
I think he was also talking about.
And I think we've all talked about. We are not. In fact, was it yesterday? No. I'm trying to figure out what day it is. Saturday, my bees were working. Cheryl probably knows the flower. It's blue and it's got a yellow insert. They were pulling pollen and hauling it back to the hive. It's the only one I have out there that still has a flower on it, but they were gathering pollen from that. We're not a pollen stricken area like Randy Oliver is.
Not usually, for sure.
About that. Randy is California's got some places that don't have a lot of pollen. Is that, and Robert, I know, has talked about that a lot too.
Jim Kelly had something to add. What was it, Jim?
If I remember right from Jerry, he was talking about pollen patties that were being made at that time. And they're really not the greatest of pollen patties yet. They're still working on different types of patties to work. And so that's the reason for half of it being sent out the door. They just haven't really got the greatest formula in the world for it. And
I had asked,
not here.
Jim, maybe you know it. I had asked Judy Woosmart about pollen. How long does pollen actually stay good in a frame? I mean, you know, sometimes we take some of those old frames out, and that stuff is pretty nasty. How long is pollen good for?
I can only tell you what my experience from raising queens. Usually we'll take some pollen in the frames of the hive and use them to put in our starters. They are okay, but if you can get fresh pollen, it's better. But I understand after that process of the next season coming up in the next spring, it's pretty well done from that. And it also depends on how much moisture is in it. I've seen some of it just actually mold.
So, and the other thing is, you know, a couple of years ago, Cecil brought a hive out that was fungicides was messing the pollen up, and they were entombing it. So Raymond Clyde is going to be our speaker this month for the thing, and he's going to do it on fungicides. So I think it's a very interesting thing, and I think if he has a little time, he's done some research on these. What's the hornet that that's up in
Murder hornet?
The murder hornet?
Yeah, the murder. He's going to kind of give a little something on that also. People are sending him stuff that, hey, I've got the first murder hornet in Kansas, and it's a cicada killer. That's mostly what they are, but so I think he's going to be really interesting, and I think everybody should tune in. And you know, he's an entomologist at K-State, so hey, he's a really nice guy, and I really enjoyed his presentation a few years ago. Might not all agree with everything any of our presenters do, but it's just a different perspective on everything.
As you listen to him, just listen to how old his research is. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, well.
I'm glad you brought it up because we appreciate a little reminder that we'll have another meeting here in a couple of weeks. And if you guys don't want any more little quizzes, then you should submit questions. Then I won't have to make up little quizzes for you. So we didn't talk about how did you do? So maybe come down to your reactions and put your hand in the air, do a little reaction. Let's see, we can get a little thumbs up or something like that if you got your 8 or better. How about that? What do we got? 8 or better. Come on, guys.
I'll say 8.
I want to see. All right. Well, a few of you, let me send you a good book recommendation. We'll do that. No, I'm glad. I appreciate you playing along. It was fun. Thank you. I enjoyed doing that.
Is that book still in print?
No. In fact, I
think
saw
so.
it on Amazon. You know, Amazon has some used books, and they wanted for $1,000. So I was kind of like,
The Libris has one copy. It's $200.
Whoa.
Can I borrow yours, Becky?
this is very precious.
Autograph.
I'll pay shipping. Go ahead and ship it to me, okay?
Okay.
Mine's autographed. I wonder how much this is worth.
Oh, you know what? I bet mine is too. I forgot. I had,
Yeah, I think mine is too.
Oh, you guys are so special.
anyway.
Never mind, Becky. I'll just drive to Robert's house and borrow his.
I think it's closer. I think it's closer. What do you got, Cheryl?
I
Oh, you got
I
a
got
copy.
an autographed one too.
Where did you get yours?
I listened to him. He spoke at Kansas Honey Producers
Yeah.
at Kansas State University, actually Manhattan, Kansas, in 2015.
Exactly. Mine's dated March 16th, 2015.
Yeah,
That's probably the last time he was here. It's probably been 5 years. So
he was fun to listen to.
he's awfully nice. Just
You guys are way too special.
You just need to come to the meetings.
Christy, where's yours?
Actually, I looked for it this afternoon and couldn't find it.
it's there. You know it's there.
You know what? You're closer. I'll borrow yours if you find it.
Okay, I'll let you know when I find it.
All right. How's Roxy?
She's doing good.
Good.
Thanks everybody for showing.